Alrighty. Well, this is the Big Friendly Swim podcast.
I
I'm
like it.
happy to have you here.
Yeah, thanks.
Um, for those who don't know you, can you I guess just introduce yourself and go through both your history with the sport of swimming and as well as the founding of the Beine Wellness Building Company program. Yeah, I
That
got I
sounds.
got I got the name.
You got it. You got it. Yeah. So, well, yeah, that's a long answer, but I'll try to make it as short as I can. So, I did swim in college. I was a college athlete at the University of Wisconsin Stevens Point Division III school in Wisconsin. I started swimming when I was 14, so super late compared to the average, athlete that swims in college. So I swam there, did my 4 years. I kind of went the same path that a lot of swim coaches go, like you don't really know what you're going to do. So you like major in business or something and then decide you're going to be a swim coach. So that was kind of the path I went. And I coached in college swimming for 13 years at the Division I level. So I've definitely seen a lot of different levels. I was a head coach. I was of a men's and women's team. I was a head coach. I was an assistant coach for just a women's team. I was assistant coach for a men's and women's team. I was a graduate assistant. So I kind of lived all different paths of the college coaching piece, like combined programs, separate programs, kind of in different spaces. So then when I left college coaching in 2018, one of the frustrations I had, which is not people, but just the general perception and concept of nutrition around the sport of swimming for the last couple of years of my coaching career. And again, it was nothing to do with anyone that who, had worked with, like everyone I had worked with in nutrition and with our schools was wonderful and awesome. It's just the concept around the sport of swimming and the nutrition, like this needs to change in some capacity. All we have in this, you grow up and you think just pasta parties and eat and you're going to be good. You're going to be ready to go. That's all you need to do. You can eat whatever you want. You're a swimmer. Just have a pasta party and you're going to swim fast. So that's how I grew up, right, swimming. And that's still very so much the notion, even with the college athletes, the notion of nutrition, fueling and recovering the body wasn't really something they had ever been exposed to until they got to school. Now there was conversation around it. So I think I thought early on, like, we need to change this. This can change because we know how important food is to our body. So from 2018 to now, we started working with individuals on their nutrition, on their habits, on figuring out what works well. About a year into what I was doing, maybe even a little bit less, I discovered the DNA testing, which was a hot topic and still is, right? Blood testing, eating for your genetics, right? That book's been out for a long time. So just I wanted to help people understand exactly what their body needed and kind of continue on this path of personalized nutrition to help people understand just because you're a swimmer, you still don't fall into X, Y, and Z category. You are you, and you need different things than I need as a swimmer. So I really kind of expanded down that path, and that's been our whole philosophy the whole time. And now we have a staff of 12, and we really want to make sure that we as a staff and we out there in the community of swimming are trying to change that notion of everybody can do the same thing. No, we need to eat for us and what we swim, what we train, what we do, what our genetics tell us, what our food sensitivities tell us. And so that's what we're trying to do in the world of swimming and trying to do it successfully with, lots of athletes of all different levels.
I've
So
actually
that's
spoken with a number of athletes I noticed who were on your website.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, I talked to Grant House back in September and
Yeah.
Patrick Callan back in August.
Yeah, they're both actually ambassadors for us. They're awesome. I really like both of them so much. They're different people, and I mean, every time I talk to either of them, I just really, really enjoy our conversation and really enjoy their paths and journeys. They're great. I've enjoyed them
It's
so
kind of
much.
funny that they just went head to head in a swim meet yesterday.
They did. They went head to head. Yeah, I was watching the results and it's Cal and ASU, both really, really great
Yeah,
teams right now in the country. And, dual meet's a dual meet and NCAA's is a different thing. So I'm just excited to see racing. That's the great thing
yeah.
about not coach of any team anymore. It's like I just get to be a fan of every team I get to be a fan of each athlete that we get to work with. I don't have to cheer for one team or another. Like if Cal does great, like, yay, that's awesome. That's Patrick's team. Or if Arizona State does great, there's Grant's team. And that's so many people that we've worked with on that team. Like I'm so excited for them. So I don't have to be a fan or dislike any team anymore. I get to be a fan of
I
every.
like that mentality. You just kind of love swimming.
Yeah, I just like
Yeah.
seeing people like be successful. Like I love watching fast swimming, but I love watching like when people we've worked with have those breakthrough moments or these aha moments or finally get past, some of these sort of barriers they've been with. There's a girl in New Zealand we worked with who she just had, been really struggling for a number of years. I think it was 3 to 4 years she hadn't gone a best time. I mean, that's a long time, right?
Yeah.
And that's that's hard. And people start thinking at that point, my career's over. What am I doing? This is such a waste of my time. I don't know if she thought those, but I know that's words and things that come into your mind. And we got to work with her, and she went a best time and went to Worlds last summer, and she was just at Worlds again. So it's just cool to see that. You just get to really know these people for who they are, and you just really like almost feel like they're surrogate sister, or I don't know. It's just really kind of fun to just be in their corner and to be their cheerleader and guide them, and then just get to watch them succeed. It's really fun.
So I'm curious like what the process is for when like you've established I guess a relationship or a connection with a new athlete. What's the process that you go by to decide what's the best nutrition fit for this individual?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we get introduced to lots of new people, teams, individuals, parents, sisters, neighbors, everybody from under the sun sometimes comes to us, it feels like, which is great. We like to help all different kinds of people. Mainly our focus is athletes, but by default, we're going to get their parents to decide they want to learn about their body. We're going to get their aunts or uncles or their siblings. So when an athlete comes to us, we don't really obviously know them, or even if we do know them, right? The first thing I want to do is just listen to them because in our space of our medical system, it's great. It keeps us alive. It keeps us healthy, right? If we sever a limb, we can go to the ER and they're going to keep us alive. Our medicine's awesome. But in our world of medicine today, you are shuttled in and out of a doctor's office to get the next person in.
Mm-hmm.
Don't really have a whole lot of time, right? We've all been there, right? And so I just want to listen to what this person has to say. And sometimes that's like a lot. They're unloading and unpacking a lot. And it's not always about food, and it's not always about recovery or performance. A lot of it's emotional, a lot of it's mental, a lot of it's the internal struggles. But I want to make sure that that individual feels like I am hearing them for who they are and what they're going through right now, what they've gone through in the past, and what their fears or their challenges are coming up. So that's the first thing I want to do. I just want to hear and listen. And so from there, what I do is I explain our process. I decide, hey, they decide, not me, but they decide, is this something that's going to help me? Or is it something this isn't giving me the answers I want? And so hopefully they decide that we can help them. And so from there, they swab their cheek, they get their report back. So once we get their results back on a genetic test, what we can then do is sit down for 90 minutes together. And sometimes it takes longer, sometimes it's shorter, and go through what does this result on this specific gene mean? What do you experience from it? And what are we going to do about it? Maybe you already do some of those pieces to that really great, but maybe you had no idea that your multivitamin you take has an ingredient in it that you can't process, which is actually hindering your recovery, right? So we talk through what we can do about it, and we try to bridge the gap between knowing and doing. Because it's one thing to know you can't convert vitamins, but then what do we do about it? So the 12-week process we go through with the genetic program is that we hopefully, I hope everyone would say this, that we get to help them understand what their report means with somebody walking them through that, how to use it in their specific lifestyle and their budget and their needs, and to help them fix the things or to work on the things that are the big struggles for them. So through supplement reviews, through check-in calls, through an action plan, we write them, right? Through Sunday night calls, like we have one tonight for about inflammation that we're running with that our clients can join in, right? We hope that they know this is what my body says, this is what it does, and this is what I'm going to do about it. So that's our goal.
Oh, that's sorry, I was like completely like engaged in that. That's really interesting, actually.
It's
Because I don't
cool.
see a lot of like nutrition related stuff like that, and I don't see a lot of like people focusing on nutrition in that way, and I think it's a really good way to go about it.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people that are, very well known right now in today's swimming world that have worked with us. There's a lot of people well known that haven't worked with us. There's people that are not well known at all who are having incredible results and are going forward. And are they ever going to be on the stage of an Olympian? I don't know, but they're still able to get the most out of their body for what it can give them. Right? Like I wasn't an Olympian, but I wanted to get the most out of my body that I possibly could have. And if I could have done anything better, I would have done it. So it's everybody in their own space and where they are has challenges. And our goal and our job is to help them with those challenges and understand why potentially those are happening and what we can do about it.
So I wanted to ask about the DNA test
Mhm.
because that's really interesting to me. I don't know much about it. I was wondering if you could describe like the process of what happens when somebody says, "Yeah, I'd like to do a DNA test." What are the next steps from there? Like, how do they get it? Where does it come from? And then what are the details that it gives you, like the results, and
Mhm.
like how would you act on them?
Good question. So once somebody decides that this is something that they're, excited to do and is going to help gives them a path to whatever they're looking for, then I send them a collection kit. We use Molecular Lab. They're out in Vancouver and they process all the samples. They actually make the kits as well. And it's all sterile. It's not like I make this in my basement or something and like processing these in the bathroom. Like that's definitely not the
You got an
case.
RV set up like in Breaking Bad.
Totally, yes, yes. The HOA hates it, but yes, we have an RV out front. No, we do not. But that's the lab we use. They're super credible. They do lots of other testing. They have partnerships with certain universities and what I'm trying to think, like cities and different corporations that use them for their testing. So they're really, really reputable lab, HIPAA compliant lab. There's always great we've always had great experience with them. There's challenges, right? Somebody's sample gets lost in the mail via UPS or whatever, right? It's not anyone's fault, but there's always little hiccups like that could potentially happen because there's human error too. Like the post office man drops it in the bud, it just happens. So from the time that they send their sample in to the time they get results is somewhere between 3 to 4 weeks as they get the report back. So what comes back is a 38 gene report. It's on 46, 47 pages that comes back. And so we learn three major sections. The physical side. So what is the athlete's athletic gene? So are they a sprint gene, a mixed gene, an endurance gene? And so that tells us what type of activities are going to fatigue their muscles more. So when do we need to be excellent at recovery? How do we hold on to strength? How do we lose strength? How do we lose endurance? How do we hold on to endurance? We learn what's the other one? Oh my gosh, injury risk. We learn recovery results. So how do they dehydrate quickly? How do they flush lactic acid? What types of cool down are going to be proper? Right? We talk about when to eat after practice and specific to that individual, what are good choices? Somebody that's lactose intolerant shouldn't be doing a big old whey protein shake, right? So that's a very personalized approach. Everyone can tell you you need to eat within 30 minutes, or some people will say 60 minutes after practice. But what does that look like? And what does that look like for me if I'm lactose intolerant? And what does that look like to my friend who might be gluten free? Different, right? So everybody is very different. So from there, we look at general scope of food sensitivities. So we look at carbs, good fats, bad fats, animal fat, dairy fat, caffeine, alcohol, and lactose. And so what are those doing in our body? And how we can use that data then is to help them understand these foods that you are highly sensitive to, well, they can be okay in certain times. We don't want to overdo them. But the morning of a meat, if we're really sensitive to dairy fat, we probably don't want like a triple cheese omelet. Okay, that's probably not the best option for us. These would be some better options for you. So we can talk about things to keep out of the routine, to sparingly use in the routine, or things that are totally fine to use and what replacements are out there. If they're a cheese person, what can we do instead to provide that? We just had a call earlier today and we were talking with a team, and somebody asked, what if you can't do eggs for protein in the morning? Right? That's a challenge. So we can help walk through what other protein options are there for breakfast that you can utilize that maybe you just haven't thought of, because I always thought eggs were the best option. From there, we go through vitamin deficiency so we can see what your body's doing from vitamins when they come in through food or supplements. So do you absorb them? Do you transport them? Do you convert them well? And that has some major implications, not only as a swimmer or an athlete, but as a long-term human being, we can see some major implications there. So definitely helpful to walk through that report with somebody, because they can look at it and feel, one, overwhelmed, or even if they have a science background, it goes, how do I apply this to my sport now? So that's the process, that from the time we decide we're going to send off the kit, they swab their cheek, and then we get a report. That's what we start to learn about the body.
I'm curious because you mentioned like the sprint gene and like a distance gene. I'm curious how, like, what the difference in those means for the athlete. Like let's say like I'm a distance swimmer. Like I swim the mile, unfortunately. Um, so what happens if I did the DNA test and it marks down that I'm more like preferable to like a sprint gene?
Yeah, we've had that before. We have people currently on our staff who are an endurance gene and were Olympic trial qualifiers in the 50, 100, and 200. Right? So you're like, why is that? Like, how does this happen? So I tell people when they get kind of hung up on that piece, it's not about, this is not telling us what you're going to be good at. This is telling us how your body is composed of type 1 and type 2 muscle fibers. If you have a lot of type 2 muscle fiber, you can still adapt to endurance type activities extremely well. Like, I have a sprint gene by my genetic report. I could definitely do a 500. I could definitely do 1,000 if I would have trained more aerobic, but it didn't feel super weird or awkward to me. But you put me in a weight room as a sprint gene, my body is going to fatigue super hard from speed, power, and strength activities, which I mean, I didn't need a genetic report to tell you that, because in college when I lifted, my body was shot for days. But now I get it. I'm full of type 2 muscle mass, right? And that stuff can be very good at lifting, and most sprint gene people enjoy lifting, but it also fatigues our body extremely hard. So we have to be careful with how we plan our approach to, especially with people that are pros or have a little bit more design to their training routine, can talk about what does this mean when it comes to recovery, rest, appropriate times to recover. How much does that really, how much you really actually need to think about resting, right? When it comes to a meet, or just to give yourself some time to recover from what we did.
That's really interesting because I've never heard it described in that way, like a sprint gene and a distance gene. Like, I don't. It's just this is all just really interesting to me. Like,
what do you think you are? Do you think you're an endurance gene?
Unfortunately, I think I am. I've never been a 50 freestyler. I've
Yeah.
never been able to. I go out in the 500 and I'll be a second off of what I went in the 50 freestyle.
Sure, yeah.
Like,
Yeah, exactly. And there's no like best
I mean,
result.
yeah.
Like everybody, I think the mixed gene is probably the most ideal, just because you can be very good and adapt to both equally as well. But there's definitely benefits and setback, or not setbacks, but things that aren't as awesome to each one of those. And so
Yeah.
there's no bad or good genes. It's just talking about,
It's
hey,
just
what.
interesting to talk about.
Right. It's helpful to help kids understand, or pros, or even adults understand their bodies better, even in a weight loss position. If somebody's well beyond, I call it permanent taper. Like if you're 20 years past taper, right? You're on permanent taper for 20 years. there's a lot of changes that come in life. So we're probably not talking about a performance situation. We're talking about how does your body recover well. Now, if you got to go to work and you're super sore, what do we need to do instead to help not be as sore for work all day? Or if you're in a weight loss goal, body composition changing goal, how does that result of the gene testing apply?
So I'm curious if, because you were talking about how on when you were a college swimmer and as a college coach, you could see that there was problems with the ways that people were treating their nutrition, that it was really generalized. Everybody was being treated in the same broad way. I'm curious if there were any like specific moments where you realized, oh, this needs to change. And then
Yeah.
what was the process after that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I would even say, I bet we're probably similar in age. So I graduated college in 2004. I was done swimming. So what I saw then is nutrition wasn't even a thing. Like maybe we heard about it once or twice, but it was not, I mean, in my space at least,
I'm
we were not.
I'm still in college actually.
Okay, so we're not the same age. Just kidding. I can't tell how old you
Don't
are.
worry,
You
don't
got
worry. It's
faces. It's like you could be 12 or you could be like,
somebody I talked to a couple weeks ago. I talked to Chad LaClose's father a couple weeks ago, and he thought I had kids.
oh, fuck. Oh, you totally have that face where you know those people that look like they could be 40 or they could be 50, you don't know.
As soon as I
Right?
shave, I go back to looking like I'm like 12.
Exactly. It's the beard that gets
Yeah.
me, right? So, you're very versatile, right? You're very versatile. You can please a lot of different age groups with your look. I love it. But every once in a while you see somebody that looks like they're like, I can't tell. Are they 40 or are they 12? I can't tell. I don't know. They could be anywhere in between. Now I forgot what your question was because I was so caught up on this. Oh no,
Sorry.
like the nutrition.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and when I was in school, like it was not a thing. It was nowhere to be heard of, pretty much. Like you just ate whatever, right? I had one of my this is terrible, but I had one of my best workouts ever. I don't think I've ever told anyone this that I've ever worked with, so you're the first one to hear this. But I had the best workout ever. I had a large Diet Coke and a hot ham and cheese and curly fries from Hardee's because Hardee's was right across the street from the pool. And it's like, hey, we're doing all out 50s from the block today. What sounds better than a huge Diet Coke and a hot ham and cheese? And I went and win a best time in practice in a 50 freestyle. Now, I don't encourage that, but it's still always like, a joke that my former teammates and I will talk about. So I don't encourage Hardee's hot ham and cheese before practice. Probably not your best, but something else helped me swim past the day. It wasn't that. So that was our mindset, right? It's like, hit Hardee's and go to practice. We didn't know any better. But then as a coach and in the last, decade to 2 decades, I think that's definitely evolved more. It's like, hey, wait, food actually does play a role in how we feel, right? There's a lot of talk around mental health. There's a lot of talk around performance, right? With making sure we're getting the right fuel into our system. And so there was definitely a couple of moments where I remember going to a meeting with our athletes, and I was going to sit in on it, and later in my coaching career, and it was men and women in the same room, and the person was presenting super great information. That was one of the first times that I was, wow, nutrition really it matters. Wow, this is and so it was an interesting piece. And so I was sitting there listening to this, like, this is great. Does anyone else not get this? Like, this is awesome. Are you guys listening? But then I started realizing, like, wait, we have this guy over here who probably weighs 180 pounds and he's 6 feet tall. And then we have this girl who's lucky if she weighs 130 pounds and she's 5'1". Why are they hearing the same information? This can't be the same for everybody. And that's true. You look at teams, and when you're in the behind the scenes of the team, there's people that struggle with keeping weight on. There's people with struggle at building muscle mass. There's people that struggle that bulk up and gain muscle mass too quickly. So they have to be careful on how they lift and what they eat. There's people that, unfortunately, there's some people with genetics and different other pieces that just, they have to be so cautious of what they eat. Otherwise, their body composition changes really dramatically super quickly. So like, why is everyone hearing this when we have women that struggle this way and then we have men that struggle this way? This can't be the same information for everybody. There has to be a better way, but there's not, right? Everyone gets the nutrition talk. Everybody hears the same information. Why can't we do better? So that was pretty much the beginning of the thought of what else is out there and how can this be better for our sport? Because other sports are doing it different, right?
Yeah.
They're doing things a lot different.
So your mention of Hardee's brought up a funny anecdote because this week I was polling my teammates because I figured it'd be interesting to get some ideas from them for this because it's a really unique opportunity. And one of my teammates jokingly brought up that I should ask you about this tradition that some people on the team do after a swim meet at a specific school that we go to. And it's where we go to this place called Iguana's Burritozilla. And I think you can tell where this is going.
Yeah, yeah.
And our coach has a running bet that if, and we go there after the meet, we don't go there before, but our coach has a running bet that if you eat this 5 pound burrito, or sorry, 5 foot burrito, that he'll pay for the whole thing. I just, it, it's, you were talking about like how different people can eat like different things and it'll affect their body differently. I've got
Yeah,
a guy on my team who's like 6'3". He's like a stick, and he eats the whole thing, and he's fine.
totally. Yeah, right?
It's so weird.
Yeah. Right. And then there's, we'll say when I'm talking with people, or even as a coach, right? There's people that will look at a French fry and they like feel like they gain weight,
Yeah,
right? Or look at a weight in the weight room and they're like, oh, my muscles already hurt. I think I'm bulking up, right? It's just so different and so individualized. Yeah. So 5 pound burrito or 5 foot burrito, that's if you're gonna do it, you might as well do it after practice or competition. I mean,
they
your
like
body's
fast
gonna,
for like the day before it too. I'll if I find it, I'll send you a picture of how big it is
yeah.
later. It's absurd. Sorry, it just when you brought up Hardee's, it triggered that like that memory of oh, this is a thing that people on the team do too.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely like things out there. I mean, when I'm talking to people, I usually ask them, what's your favorite unhealthy food? Right? What do you so enjoy? That's super delicious. Okay, so this is what we see in your report. If you love those things, let's wait until like after the meet and let's go get Chick-fil-A. Okay. If they're not closed on Sunday. I know you love Chick-fil-A, but is it the best swim fast food? It's not. So let's wait till after the meet. And it's like our thing. After the meet, we go get Chick-fil-A. Cool. That's great. So we can swim fast and enjoy some of our
Yeah,
stuff once in a while too. So I'm never the person that's going to say you can't eat something, but you're also going to pay for it if you do. So just be ready to pay for it if you're going to enjoy something that your body really doesn't like.
the teammate that I'm thinking of did pay for it, and he's gonna give me some specific words for calling him out.
That's all right. I called myself out on the Hardee's, and nobody has ever heard that. So that's we all have our
Yeah.
skeletons, I guess, right? That's Hardee's hot ham and cheese before dive sets. You can do. Don't try it; it's not going to work well. But
I'm curious because you brought up the topic of fast food at swim meets. I'm curious if in your opinion, because I do see people bring fast food to swim meets and it bothers me. if if there's any specific fast food place that you're like, this is okay if you're gonna have it during a swim meet, and
Mhm.
then if there's like some basically just commonly very easy to fix mistakes that people make in their nutrition at swim meets.
Yeah, that's actually really great. So fast food, I mean, obviously, in an ideal world, we would make our own food. We'd probably grow our own food. We'd raise our own cows. Now, we're all far from ideal world, right? So we're adapting in this world of convenience. And when we travel, we don't have a whole lot of choices. So I always say Chipotle's a home run. You can get rice, you can get protein, you can get beans, you can get vegetables, you can get healthy fat, right? You can really get a meal in a box. If you get the rice bowl, right, you can get a pretty good meal on the road. Now, same thing with Qdoba, right? You can get a pretty decent meal, honestly, or Moe's, any of those types of places. Even places like, I know this isn't super exciting, but I tell people on the road, like, just look for the basics. Look for a Texas Roadhouse, look for a Chili's, get grilled chicken, get a potato, get some vegetables. Like, it can be very simple. You don't have to go crazy and you get that delivered. Right. Not necessarily fast food, but sometimes as teams, when I was coaching, we'd stop at an exit, give everyone $11 for lunch, go. Right. And our choices, I specifically remember our choices sometimes were KFC, Arby's,
The
McDonald's,
typical
like,
like rest stop fast food
yeah,
places.
rest stop. Here's an exit. You got 4 restaurants you can walk to. Go get some food and get back on the bus in 15 minutes. And here's $11, okay? Because that's the per diem that you get from the state. So, right. So sometimes you have that scenario and you don't have it's not an ideal situation, but you can make the best choice you possibly can. Right. So if you do get in that situation, get a grilled chicken sandwich. You can get the fruit cup instead of the curly fries. You can get a side salad instead of the Big Mac. You know, you can kind of pair all these things together. So if you get a grilled chicken sandwich and a fruit cup and a side salad, that's pretty good. It's decent, right? It's the best choice you
Yeah.
could make in the situation you're given. And then hopefully you're smart enough to bring some snacks on the bus, right? That are good and options for your body and good healthy snacks that you can bring with you on the bus. So when you get hungry, you got something else to eat, right? So Chipotle, Qdoba, Panera can be decent, right?
That's a
there's
go-to for our team is Panera.
yeah, I mean there's some
Yeah.
decent things there, right? But even when you get taken to Arby's, you can still kind of make it work if you have to.
I think that's a much better way to think about it than the way I've seen some people go about it of, okay, I'm at McDonald's, I might as well get a 10-piece chicken nugget and fries and a shake.
A number 11 with a
Yeah.
shake, right? Two cheeseburger meal, yeah, with the shake. Yeah. Can't go wrong.
Um, sorry, my chair keeps like. So I'm curious. You've worked with a lot of Olympians and a lot of big name athletes, and pretty much every single pro meet or big meet is like 3 to 4 days long, with Olympic trials being somehow 8 days long, and some of these people are swimming 1 to 2 events a day.
Right.
How do you like when helping them set up like a nutrition plan for that meet? For let's say like Olympic trials, like an 8 day meet.
Yeah, and I mean, funny enough, where when we started 2018, we started really with the genetic testing 19-ish. So at that point, we still thought the Olympics, we had no idea the Olympics weren't going to happen in the next year. So then the Olympics get delayed, and so we've actually only been through one cycle, basically, not even a full true 4 year block with people. We've been through Olympic trials, Olympic games, and then now this shortened block where that's coming up again pretty quickly. So we haven't done that a whole lot. But NC2As, right, is similar to that
Yeah.
kind of concept. Your US nationals, if you're there the whole time, similar concepts. But I tell people it's really no different than practice. Okay, so before practice, our routine should already be set. We know what we have 2, 3 hours before we go to practice. We know what we have on our way to practice. We know what we're doing during practice, and we know what we do after practice, right? Each session of the meet is like its own individual meet or practice when it comes to fueling and recovery. It's the same thing. So, and after session one, you're probably going to feel pretty good, right? And then it's easy to neglect the hydration, the carbs, the protein, the 30-minute recovery food, right? It's first session. We're excited. Like, I feel awesome. I'm feeling great. But that's really on day 6, day 5, day 7, we're really going to struggle. So each session is its own pre-workout, during workout, or pre-meet, during meet, post-meet, recovery, fuel nutrition plan. And so that shouldn't change. And I think that's a big misconception. Still, I get a lot of questions on that. So when taper happens, what do we do different? What should we do? Nothing. It should be the same, right? Or we get to this big meet and I only take this supplement before big meets. Why? Right? That doesn't make any sense. We shouldn't change our routine from the daily practice for the most part to when we go to a meet, or from a dual meet to Olympic trials. Our routine should be nailed down. We're not going to go experiment with new stuff, or we're not going to change things just because it's we rested our bodies, it shouldn't change. It's the same exact thing. So you have to use those meets in those years, if you're talking about like Olympic trials, to figure out your routine. So if you want to wait until 2 months before Olympic trials to figure that out, we're too late, right? You need to have been working on that for a number of months before.
You know, I that actually is like something new for me to learn in that when you because my common a common misconception that I know now that I had was that when I get to taper season, like when I get to the week of taper, like I need to change how I eat and how I like and change how I act after and before practice and how my nutrition is. But I'm also curious because you mentioned a 30-minute like window, and like something that I've heard a lot, especially like in my time as an athlete and in like my time on club swimming, was the 15-minute window. So I'm curious your thoughts on either a 15-minute or 30-minute window, and like what the difference is between the two.
Yeah, so I mean, you'll hear all different types of answers to that question. I've heard 60, I've heard 90, right? The ideal timeline is as soon as you freaking can get food, right? Is to get protein and carbs. If that's 2 minutes, awesome. If it's 15 minutes, okay. If it's 30, we're still okay. But there becomes a time where your body doesn't absorb it and use it as well for recovery fuel. So carbs and protein are super important after practice because that gives us the best time to use carbs and protein as recovery. If we wait an hour and a half, our body's like kind of bored or like, okay, yeah, old news. I can't, whatever. We'll just, calories and we can recover a little bit. But right away, it's like our body's excited. We can use that right away to help recover our bodies faster. And that's huge. And I just spoke with a team. We did a team workshop with a team out in California this morning. And I said, if there's one thing that you can do differently, that's super easy to recover better, it's within 30 minutes, carbs and protein. And that's not hard. Bring a snack, or if some schools provide you with those opportunities to grab a snack from a fueling station, right? It can be super simple. And that's a huge neglect piece for college kids. And it's a huge neglected piece for high school athletes because they drive home, then dinner gets made, and it's like it can be 90 minutes before they eat something. They have to bring a recovery snack. So anyone that works with me knows your 30-minute magic window better be hit every time after practice and after the cool down of your last swim of the session, because it's no different than practice, right? You have to recover your body within 30 minutes of that cool down.
Now I'm curious as well, actually, building off of that, if there's any specific things that you could name, like this is something good. Like I've got like I swear I didn't have this prepped. I just have these on my desk. Like I've got these like body armors that I constantly am bringing into practice with me, putting in my locker, and then as soon as I'm done and I get to my locker, I start slowly like drinking it through that like 15-minute to 30-minute window.
Yeah. So again, it sort of applies to your personal genetics and food sensitivities. So Body Armor Light has 2 ingredients in it that a lot of people I work with shouldn't have. Sucralose. I think it has sucralose. I think there's an artificial sweetener in there, and folic acid. I know there's folic acid in there. So Body Armor might use stevia. I can't remember off the top of my head. But usually the lights, right, or your G2 products have an artificial sweetener in there. And as an athlete, post-workout, we can't be concerned about the sugar and the carbs. That's when we need it. We should be concerned about the sugar and the carbs at the dining hall an hour later when there's 6 desserts on our tray. Like, that's not the kind of sugar and carbs we should be ingesting for recovery. It should be right after practice that we get carbs. So light products typically don't have as many carbs or as sugars, which is prohibiting proper recovery then, right? So one of the things when we do team workshops or we work with teams is like, I will give you a slide on here's some products you can buy on Amazon or you can buy at the grocery store to properly help recover your body. When I spoke at ASCA this past fall, that's basically what we did and showed coaches, here's things your parents can buy. Here's things that you can give to your board to put in your concession stand. Here's good ideas and good products, different than Nutri-Grain bars, different than Body Armor, different than your normal Gatorades, right? Or your cheese sticks or Cheetos, right? Here's some different ideas that are going to be better options. Not that there's any bad food product on the market. It's just, is it the best for the scenario you're trying to use it for and your body? That's all.
I like that's again. I'm learning a lot out of this because I think there's definitely a misconception of if something has sugar equals bad.
And that's what we've all of a sudden been taught, right? In early, what was that, in the 70s and 80s? It was like all of a sudden fat. Fat is bad. Fat is bad. Put more sugar in it because fat is the bad. And then somewhere that changed, like, oh, sugar is bad. Sugar, if you don't have carbs in your body, if you don't have glucose, your brain doesn't work. Like we have to have that. And as an athlete, I'm just going through my sports nutrition research right now. And so I'm driving yesterday, listening to the textbook online on my phone, and they said restricting carbs or like trying to go keto as an athlete is like performance suicide because your body can't function. I was like, dang, that really makes sense. Yes, because you can't recover and you can't fuel your body. When your body's first source of energy is non-existent, what is it going to do? You're going to end up just cannibalizing your body and eating your muscle mass at practice because you have nothing. You have no energy sources for your body to work off of. So I thought that was, I've never heard that before, that phrase, like, oh, that's genius. So I was trying to learn new stuff. So I'm like, dang, that's a good one.
I mean, I'm always trying to learn new stuff as well, and this has definitely been a lot of like, I think especially for the people I know who I send my interviews, this is gonna be really interesting for like my little brother's club team, for example. Like a lot of his friends watch this podcast, so I think this is really good information for them to be hearing.
Yeah.
Or go ahead, sorry.
Oh, we actually started this. It wasn't really intended to be a revenue generator, but more of a place where we can pull together ideas. So we have an Amazon shop. People can buy it from there. If you find it at Costco, awesome, go for it. But we have different categories. So like swim, eat, fuel. You can click on that and see what our recommendations are for what can I eat at a swim meet. Protein powders, here's ones that we would recommend because they are free from these certain ingredients. I think we only have sport safe ones on there for the most part, but we try to at least provide options for people of, hey, here's where you can go, or here's what you can look for at your Target to find things that are going to fit into this lifestyle that you're looking for.
Now, there's this like common discourse and like pretty common thought process around like supplements and people who constantly are like, again, I'm gonna call out my teammates here. I have teammates who shotgun like Red Bulls before they go swim.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Do they try scoop creatine too?
Yeah.
Like get a scoop, we had to put down the hatch. Oh yeah, I hear it all. I hear it all.
Like, what's can you like talk about some of the negative ways that can affect your body? And like, what are some supplements that actually like provide a positive impact on an athlete and don't make you crash in the middle of a 500?
Yeah, yeah. Red Bull, depending on your caffeine sensitivity, because caffeine sensitivity is one that we do test. Now, when I go through reports with people, that might be one we spend a lot of time going over because they may be a caffeine user and they need to back up their caffeine intake appropriately to feel optimal effects when they want to. So they're not a cool down pool champion, when their caffeine actually kicks in, right? So, or crashing mid 500. So caffeine can be used in various different ways. And it's also a little bit about how you want to feel with caffeine. Right. So do you like the jitteries? Do you like the anxiousness? Do you just like to feel a little bit of wake up? Right. But caffeine testing on how that caffeine responds in your body will give us indications on when appropriately used to feel exactly what you want to feel. Now, it also tells us there's very rare that I hear somebody that has a medium to a high caffeine sensitivity that can take caffeine before their final swims, right, and actually go to bed before 3 a.m. So that becomes an issue. So we have to talk through how to shut that body down so we can get to bed. Because on an 8-day meet, if you're not going to bed till 3 a.m., that's not going to look pretty at the end of the meet. So yeah, there's lots of supplements on the market. I think it's probably one of the most scary things for athletes out there, especially you would think the pros and the post grads and even college kids would have the best idea on how to use them because they have the most, resources and knowledge. But my experience has been most pros and like the high level kids don't use a thing because they don't know what to do and they're scared to do anything, so they just don't do it. It's, that um, paralysis by analysis. Right. They just don't know what to do. So we're just not going to do it at all. And then some people test positive on things. So like, I'm not doing anything. I'm just safe for doing what I do. And that's nothing. So there's companies that are sports safe. So I always direct people towards a company we have a relationship with called Clean Athlete. They are awesome. Everything they make is sports safe. It's NSF certified. There's a company called Thorne. They make a line of sports safe stuff as well. They are great. They have some awesome products. So there's a lot of NSF safe companies out there, NSF certified companies, and they actually, if you ever have a question on a supplement, you can go to their site, NSF for Sport, and check, like, is my product or is my brand sports safe? Is it certified? Or I'm looking for a melatonin that's sports safe. So you can type in melatonin, it's going to bring up all the ones that are there. So if you at least stick with sports safe stuff, you're 90% winning. Then it's just refining, what do you need? What type of that vitamin do you need? Where do we use it in the day? Right? So we know where to get it, but what do we need to do to make sure you're optimally getting that in your system? So I never recommend anything to somebody without, obviously working with them. But, caffeine can be used, creatine can be used. Are any of those bad products? No, but they can be extremely dirty products if you're not using a sports safe thing. One of the kids I work with, he's a freshman in college, and he goes, honestly, when I look for a pre-workout, I just go to GNC and buy the prettiest bottle. It's like, that's probably what I would have done. Bomb Pop pre-workout. Cool. That looks delicious, right? Like, I don't know anything about it. Just look pretty. Like, but that's what people will do with supplements, which is super scary, right? Because we don't know what's in there. If you happen to get tested, could you test positive? Yes. Anytime you put something in your body, whether it's sports safe or not, you are taking a risk. Now, your risk is much more minimized if you're using something that has an NSF label on it, right? But there's always a risk in anything that we do. Heck, you could have a poppy seed muffin and go, test positive potentially. So there's always risk, but we can minimize that risk for the betterment. The results that can come from properly fueling the body can be much more beneficial than the risk.
Now I'm wondering, because you've talked about some of the different ages of athletes that you've worked with. What do you think is like the youngest age that athletes and just individuals as a whole, not just athletes, can really start to think about their nutrition? Because I've seen like parents that I know who obsess over their child's nutrition and obsess over every single little thing that they do or every single little thing that they eat, to the point that when I was on a club team, there was a kid who was like 15 years old and like 4'11" and like 90 pounds. Clearly like underweight, like stunted growth. I'm curious what that age is where they can really start to think about it and take action on their nutrition.
And I think it's a two-part answer. I think around age 12, the parent loses over 50% of control of what that kid ingests on a daily basis. And so that's good that they can now, hopefully by that point, they already sort of have the tools to understand what's going to fuel them properly. In America, we wait until they get to college to talk about food. In the sport world, like in the swimming world, I can't speak on any other part of any other sport, but in the swimming world, it's very rare that a college freshman would show up and know how to use any products that were in the fueling station properly. Like there are people eating the energy gummies after practice. Like, what are we doing? They didn't know though. They had no idea. Like those are all carbs. You need protein too. Those are pre-workout or during workout. They have no concept. So in America, we start this conversation way too late. And I think that's why you also see pros and post grads that now focus on their nutrition getting way, way, way faster because it's a huge component to their performance. And when they start to focus on it, good things happen. And the kids that I work with internationally in Australia, Norway, the UK, France, this is like something they learn super young. And they are way ahead of our American athletes when it comes to nutrition at this, same age. So I think by 12, hopefully they have some concept and understanding like, hey, food matters in how I feel and how I perform at practice. And food can be a tool for me to recover my body. So to have them have that knowledge, that has to ideally be coming up from the ground. So we've had people test their infant children, their 5-year-olds, their 6-year-olds, right? Because they want to know how to feed their child properly. They want to know what kind of foods to buy. And so when I'm working with a parent, then it's more parent focused there with say a 9-year-old swimmer. I have a 9-year-old too, so I totally get it. But when you're working with a parent of them, we don't want to provide any bad relationship with food. We want them to understand. I like to talk to the young athlete, the 9-year-old, and get them on Zoom. Like, let's talk about what you like to eat before practice. Oh, that's awesome. Now, why is that banana good? Sugar, carbs. Yes, that's so good. Now, what do you eat after practice? Oh my gosh, that's so good, right? Can you make sure you get like a cheese stick with that so we get some protein, right? Because protein are good for these guys, right? So we bring that conversation to their level and begin that conception. Now, mom and dad have, more information from the report, and I'm going to talk through them with some of those other pieces. But my job is within like 20 minutes, because that's their attention span, to help them understand food is fuel. Right? Food is going to help us feel great. It's going to make us feel terrible. And is there ever something you should never, ever, ever, ever eat? Unless you're like, going to die because you have a super bad allergy to it. No, you can eat ice cream, but is it the best idea to have before we go to practice? No, probably not, because X, Y, and Z. Okay, here's when's a good time to have that ice cream, because then it's not going to affect your practice. Right? So
Yeah.
It's kind of a two-part answer. I think the conversation has to start early, which means you have to educate the parents early, right? And about their child. And then by 12, 13, hopefully they have those skills that we can now take that to the next level. Okay, so here we know how that food affects us. Now, how do we even focus more on nutrition at this point and take that to another level?
I think that's a pretty interesting way to look at things, and it needs to start at such a young age. And on the topic of talking to a 9-year-old kid on their level, it's similar to coaching them in swimming,
right?
Where you gotta take concepts that work for teenagers and adults and find a way to simplify it for a kid who's not gonna understand when you tell him what figurative drag is at first.
Exactly. Right. So if a little, 8-year-old tells me my favorite thing to eat at swimming is goldfish, I'm like, oh my gosh, do you know what I ate when I was a kid too? More goldfish than I could probably tolerate. But knowing what we know, because you guys did this cool test, there's an ingredient in there. There's something in that goldfish that doesn't work the best with your body. Okay, it can actually make you feel kind of sick to your stomach or even more tired. You may not really feel it, but it's working against you. So there's something else. Here's a different option that you can try that's just like goldfish, but it doesn't have that thing in there that's going to not really work the best for our body. Because when we swim, we want to be at our best, right? We want to beat that person next to us. So we want to put the good stuff in our body so we can beat that person. So you get on their level, just like you said, right? Exactly. And so you talk to them for 20 minutes about hydration, about fueling, about recovering, about cool down. And then mom and dad know the rest. Right.
Yeah. So that about wraps up everything that I've got for you. But and honestly, this has been really, really informative. This is completely different from pretty much every other interview that I've done.
Yeah.
But in a really good way.
Yeah, it's good to have variety, right? And
yeah.
We got to work with some really awesome people. And I mean, it's just really cool whether they're, a high level athlete or they're just kind of getting started in the sport. There's so much you can help an individual with, which is cool.
So now I guess it's your time. It's at the end of every interview. I like to, obviously I don't have a crazy big platform, but I like to give the people I'm talking to time to basically promote something of their choice. So when I was talking to Caitlin Sandino, she just promoted being kind. Mm-hmm. So it could be something as simple as that, or it could be a sponsorship, or in your case you have a book. So the floor is yours.
Oh man, that's like a wide open platform. I don't even know what. So, man, if so we obviously have programs. You can work with us individually. You can find us on Instagram. If you want a lot of free content, find us on Instagram. We have great blogs. There's a lot of great stuff that you can learn for free, right? There's a lot of great content from us that is swimming driven, which is awesome. If you want to work with us, just shoot us a DM on Instagram and we can get set up so we can listen and learn about your struggles and challenges. But if anything, I can say is encourage the parents or club coaches or anybody that feels like they can help their child or wants to help their athletes or their child more, getting that nutrition piece started, even if it's one change, right? It's like we changed our peanut butter. Cool. Now what can we change? It's one change at a time. And totally changing nutrition seems super overwhelming, but it's just one little change at a time, just like anything else, right? Like you said, fingertip drag for a 9-year-old is probably not something we're going to grasp real well because they're going to be flipping water at their teammates and like dragging their whole hand, and that's just not going to work. So you one little thing at a time adds up. And so when we talk to people, it's like all a 90 minutes worth of, okay, this needs to be changed, this needs to be changed, this needs to be changed. It can feel overwhelming, but when we write out the action plan, I tell them it's one step at a time. Start at number one, and when you've incorporated that, often move to number two. And some of them are super simple, and some of them are going to take some time, but it's okay. This is a journey. Nutrition is not an overnight change. It's a journey on your body. So that's my thing. Start as soon as you can with your kids and your athletes to learn about food and fueling the body.
And then if you've got any links or anything that you want me to put in the description, shoot me an email. They'll be right at the top of the description of the video.
Okay, yeah, you can use my website's great. There's blog, there's a couple free downloads, there's a bunch of stuff there that's awesome. We do workshops with teams, to get that conversation started. I mean, my workshop with the younger kids, like the 12 and unders, is very different than 13 and over, right? That conversation is different. I find the 12 and unders are actually like super interactive. Like they don't care what they say. They'll just tell
Oh,
you
they're easier to coach.
Oh, they'll say fart, poop, like they'll say everything, right? They don't care.
The same philosophy applies to coaching them in the pool. 12 and unders are a lot easier to get to listen and engage than high schoolers and middle schoolers. They'll just look at me like,
whatever, right? But actually, I've had some of the older groups that I've actually got to work with on Zoom. They've actually been really great. I mean, they're interactive. They've obviously been coached very well to take information in and to respond. And there's been some really great groups too. But the 12 and unders are hilarious because they just will say whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm like, what happens when you eat a lot of beans? They're like, poop, gas, right? And then the high school is like, silence. They might say like tummy ache. So it's so funny. They're awesome. The 12 and unders are great.
awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. Again,
Thanks for
this was
having
awesome.
me.
Like
Yeah,
I
thanks
was
so
fully
much.
dialed in the whole time. Like this is really interesting to learn about.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you asked me to come on. You've had some really incredible guests, so I feel
I've been
honored
so lucky that like
to be a part
people
of
have
it.
been willing to like share their time with me.
It's so cool. I mean, the name just itself, like, how can you say no? Big
I
what's
finally settled on a name
podcast?
like 6 interviews in.
I think it's awesome, right? Yeah, I think it's great. So I would keep the name, keep going, keep doing
Thanks.
your thing. I think it's awesome.
It's definitely been like a snowball effect of the more people I've gotten, the more people are willing to be like, oh, okay, you've talked to this person, like these aren't just random individuals, these are like reputable names in swimming.
Right. And the same thing happened to us. I mean, I worked with some people that were great athletes, like national teamers, like awesome people. And then there was one name that everyone's like, oh, dang, you worked with that person? Okay, okay, I get it. Okay. Okay, you're cool now, right? But I mean, it shouldn't be that way because the
Yeah.
people I worked with, oh, leading up to that, were like these awesome athletes, awesome people. But from the outside perspective, validity comes in when they're like, "Oh, that person was on your like I didn't know Caitlin was on your show." I'm like, "Dang, I was a fangirl of Caitlin. Like I was a fangirl when I was a swimmer. Like I was like, dang, Caitlin's so fast, right? Like that's awesome."
I remember when, so I met both Tom Shields and Nathan Adrian in person. Those
Oh
were
my
like
God,
my first two. Those were the first two people that I interviewed,
I love
and
Tom
he's
Shields.
so
I
funny.
love him. He's been I've worked with Tom, so I've got to talk to him. He's so funny. He cracks me up.
It was when I mentioned that I'd interviewed him with to Nathan Adrian, because I totally ran into Nathan Adrian randomly at a swim meet. That was when he was like, "Oh, okay, like this is a guy that I swam with and went to the same college as." Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, I've been so lucky. I mean, sometimes I'm like, "Yeah, this is normal," and then sometimes I like fanboy a little bit. I'm
Yeah.
like, I've gotten to talk to these people.
Yeah, there's definitely people like I've caught myself like, dang, that person's so awesome. But then like quickly you lose that because you dive into who they are.
Yeah,
And like some people will tell like, oh, you've worked with all these people, that's so cool. Like, yeah, but seriously, like what Grant tells me or what I talked to with Caleb or what Leon or this is just real people.
yeah.
And you just want success for these real people because they're pouring everything into what they do. And you just want that success for them, no matter at what level or stage it's at, whether they swim Division 2 or a Division 3 swimmer like me, or
I'm in
somebody's
community college.
breaking my record, community college, it doesn't matter. You want the success for them and because of you're so invested in the person that they are, not the athlete, but the person that they are. And so that's what's really cool is you get to really see these athletes for the people who they are, and no, not a whole lot of people get to see that. So I'm so grateful like that I get to see that part of them and really know them as a person, which is super special because there's just some amazing people out there that the world doesn't get to see. That they just see them on TV or they see them on US nationals
Yeah.
swimming. Great. Take it as a huge compliment that you have the face of a 12 or a 40-year-old. Like it's a huge compliment. You're always going to fool people.
Yeah.
You'll keep them guessing.
I've had facial hair since like third grade.
Oh, totally. Yes, you totally are gonna be able to fool people the rest of your life. I love it. What championship meet you guys have? You have a conference meet coming up?
So we actually just started our season for
Oh,
community
you just
colleges.
started.
I tried water polo for the first time in the fall,
Okay.
and then that was an experience. And then our swim season literally started like Monday.
What
Yeah.
school are you at?
I'm at Las Positas College in Livermore.
In Livermore. I
Yeah.
wonder if so. We had a guy at Purdue who failed out of school. And I wasn't coach of the men's team, but obviously we're all pretty interconnected. And I feel like that's the school he went to for a semester, got his grades up,
Do you remember
and
his
then
name?
yeah, Enrique,
Hold on.
he's record holder at Purdue. Enrique, what was his last name? Shoot. Everyone just call him Enrique, right?
I
Enrique?
can I can look him up.
Um, it wasn't, maybe it was, oh my gosh. No, Guillermo, not Enrique. Oh my gosh, it's terrible. Guillermo Blanco.
Do you
Was
know
his,
what year?
oh my gosh. It was probably like 16, 15, 17, some 14, I don't know.
You know, I'll text my coach. I'll text my coach and I'll shoot you an email if he's like, yeah, I know who that is.
Guillermo Blanco. Yeah, it might have been that school, but he had to go to somewhere. He was from Spain. And so he failed at school, had to go somewhere, and it was a community college in California, swam. So one of my good coaching friends, he coaches at Indian River. So
Okay.
he's at Indian River. Yep. So I'm familiar with the community, yeah, college swimming world. So
I
this is the year they'll be able to do it. I think that
I think at the very least they can get second.
yes, I think there definitely could play for first.
Yeah.
Cal could, Texas could. I
I
mean,
mean,
there's
331 and a 400 IM in season in
Leon.
January is absurd.
He's absurd.
I was at a swim meet yesterday and I was sitting around with my younger brother's coaches and I'm like, I was like, I think he'll go like a 333. Like he had a 148 two breast. That's a really good swim. Like that's a really good swim. I think like 333, 334 low. and then I'm watching the meet, and I had like a watch on because they didn't have
Yeah,
like
the
a, yeah. So I was sitting there with a watch, and I stopped my watch, and it said 3:31, like 9, and I'm like,
was a good
absurd
kid.
race.
Good kid. Good kid. Again, you see that and then like you get to talk to him and you're like, oh my God, this kid's so awesome. I want you to win everything because I just really like you. I just like you so much.